The news drops. It's absolutely stunning. The Lakers are sold, flipped really. $12.5 billion is the price. And Mike, I think my first question is, what's more surprising to you, how this went down or who the team got sold to?
Yes. Um, look, I think the how, I guess, probably is a little bit more surprising, mostly because like this is Mark Walter took over last October at a record-setting price, the $10 billion valuation. Usually, when people buy sports teams now, it's not kind of like on a quick buy and flip, right? Especially again, not at those prices. Um, and so the fact that it's happening less than a year after he bought the team, it's happening obviously against this drumbeat of headlines about him and his companies and a federal investigation. And then all of a sudden, you have that the Lakers sale come out of the ether. That was definitely surprising, right? Like I think the more headlines we saw about the Mark Walter investigation, the more questions it started to raise. And then he sells the team. At the Who, maybe a little bit less surprising. So Bob Iger has reportedly wanted an NBA team for a while. Joshua Kushner Josh Kushner has owned stakes of two NBA teams, right? As a minority investor, first the Grizzlies, then the Heat. And then he and those two were trying to buy an NBA expansion team, and that process is underway. Bidding not quite there, but like people are doing their intent. Hey, this is how we'll go. I don't know to compare it to like buying a house, but I guess it's showing up for the open house and letting people know, here's my email. I might be bidding on it later. And so like that part, obviously these two streams kind of converge in this Lakers sale.
Yeah, lots of follow-ups here. First, for people who may not understand, when you say federal investigation into alleged improprieties, not with the Lakers, not with the Dodgers, who Mark Walter also owns, not with Chelsea, the Premier League club he also owns, but an insurance company or multiple insurance companies. Can you flesh that out for us?
I'll do the best I can. It is admittedly like super complex. And so, Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal have done great reporting on this. And it's that the feds are looking into insurance companies that Mark Walter owns and Guggenheim Partners, which he has a stake in and he's the CEO of. And just that they possibly could have not properly valued things and in their filings to the SEC, and also partially to spur a deal with a UAE sovereign wealth fund that was set to give them $10 billion right ahead of the Lakers sale in 2025. And so those things, Bloomberg reported, to kind of put Mark Walter in a need for cash as he tries to make good on all these things that led to the feds investigating him. And obviously the quickest way to unwind that is to make, almost 25% in less than a year on an NBA team.
Yeah, so Mark Walter he put out a statement, but it was pretty milquetoast, just thanks to the Buss family and blah, blah, blah. But Stan Kasten, who is the president of the Dodgers, he came out yesterday and said this has nothing to do with the investigation, the federal investigation, the sale of the Lakers. Is that beyond belief?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what insight he has into what the feds are investigating and how this affects the entire Mark Walter financial empire, right? He's, to your point, president, or I'll just use VIP at the Dodgers, right? Like, what insight does he get into what the rest of Mark Walter's situation is? I can believe that it won't impact the Dodgers necessarily. This is a team that they bought back in 2012, I think. And so maybe it could have predated all these things that the federal government is reportedly looking into. But obviously, Walter has kind of a sports empire, or at least had until earlier this week with the Dodgers and the Lakers and the Sparks too, which is another team he owns.
Of course, the WNBA team that is not a part of this deal. Okay, so while we're talking about characters kind of in this story, I don't know how many sports fans really knew Josh Kushner, even as a minority owner of Memphis and then of the Miami Heat. But we got to know him because of the story about FIFA and the World Cup. And Gianni Infantino, the head of FIFA, was all poised to sell off part of the World Cup to private equity, and it was going to be Josh Kushner. The backlash was so loud and so swift that they called the deal off. So, like, how does that play into the story? Because it's almost like, all right, well, we were going to buy the World Cup or a $4.2 billion stake in the World Cup. All right, let's just pivot. We'll buy the Lakers.
Yeah, this Lakers sale is really interesting because now the more we talk about it, it seems like it's like a Venn diagram of like 5 different circles, and they're all kind of converging, atop the Staples Center. I'm going to call it the Staples Center. But, so on top of all the other stuff we talked about, you're right. Josh Kushner through Thrive Capital, which is his venture capital fund, they were set to be the lead investors in investing in, I believe, roughly 20% of what FIFA was going to do, like a financial commercial spin out of all the, the properties that they own. And that was going to be worth about $4.2 billion. And that was met with such visceral reaction when it went public, such visceral distaste and anger from so many parts of the soccer world that they just like killed it, right? And now Gianni Infantino is fighting for his job. You see like UEFA and other soccer federations, including the one the US is in, saying like, we don't want you as president. This is, like a catastrophe. And so, this comes right after the Lakers sale comes right after, that deal dies. And so theoretically Thrive might have some extra money sitting around in addition to the money that they allocated to kind of bid on an NBA expansion team. And, a Vegas expansion team roughly was going to go in the neighborhood of $8 to $10 billion, it seemed like. And they were going to be the lead investors in a $4.2 billion-ish investment round. And 8 plus 4.2 kind of gets us to about 12 and a half. Using my loose non-reporting math, it does seem like a convergence of things all comes together here.
All right. So obviously people are now going to know Kushner for another reason, because he's got a pretty famous last name, because his brother is married to Ivanka Trump. And there are some out there, and I'm curious how much credence you give what is being called a conspiracy theory, or as you said, the sort of Venn diagram of people who are involved in this story. A cynic may look at this and say, Mark Walter is being investigated by the FBI, by the feds. He needs some leniency here, or needs a favor. So maybe I don't know, sell the Lakers to someone who is at least somewhat in President Trump's orbit. Is this worth the cynicism? Is there anything here?
I mean, look, I'm never one to kill a good conspiracy theory, but as a reporter, I kind of have to live in the world of facts. And at least right now, there is nothing tangible kind of like standing that up. Obviously, Josh Kushner and Jared Kushner are brothers, they're siblings. I don't think that we've seen Josh Kushner kind of get involved, let's say, in that side of the family to this point. But yeah, I mean, we've seen what's happened during the administration, so I understand why people are making that leap. I just don't know if there's anything there right now to kind of stand that up, and it might just be a conspiracy theory, because I think the most, Occam's razor, the most logical thing is that Mark Walter is under investigation and, in need of money to kind of like deal with that. And honestly, spinning off like, the thing that you just bought most recently that is a very high value and is a quick way to get the cash that you need makes a lot of sense. And it seems like Bloomberg reported too that he's talked to other investors about, other deals that might help him get the capital that he's looking for.
Yeah, which is funny, though, because the Dodgers are so steadfast that nothing is going to happen. Meanwhile, the guy is selling off very valuable pieces of his portfolio. So, okay, the basketball of it all, just because Mark Walter was there for a short amount of time doesn't mean that he didn't make some changes. There was a new president who came in. Rob Pelinka is still there. We saw, obviously, their most important player, Luka Doncic, sent out a social media post of support. I don't know what else he's going to do or say. They traded some major draft capital for Walker Kessler. Like, there have been some decisions that have definitely been made under Mark Walter's watch. Does this impact the Lakers in a basketball way? If so, how?
I mean, that's a great question. And I'm sure a lot of people around the NBA are wondering that, because like the whole premise of Mark Walter taking over the Lakers was that he was going to Dodgersify the Lakers, right? Like the Dodgers under the Bus family for so long were super successful, but also just like really a mom and pop type of organization. It was small front. Yeah. Like, which is weird, right? Like the Los Angeles team is the one with the small front office that's not known for, these gigantic coaching staffs and personnel but it's really what they were. Like Jeannie Buss ran that thing tight with her and, Linda Rambis and Rob Pelinka and, Kurt Rambis had a voice there. And they were hiring new assistant GMs. They were supposed to build out the front office. Farhan Zaidi, who's the former Giants San Francisco Giants general manager, and Andrew Friedman were, involved in like understanding what was going on and helping do that build out, make them more analytical and more empirical, and all these things that the Dodgers have had success with. You saw it on the Sparks too. They hired a bunch of, they hired an assistant GM and, other execs too, to make it more analytics based. So like, what happens with all of that, right? Like, what happens to that build out? Do Iger and Kushner want to continue that process? We don't know anything about the way that they want to run an NBA team. And I think it's an important question. Like, I think modernizing the Lakers would have really helped them, but do they want to do that? Do they want to invest in that? And we really don't know yet. And I think that's going to be an important question. Like, Rob Pelinka is on his third owner in a year. Will this one want to continue to keep him in that job? Like, anytime, it's not that crazy to see a new owner take over and want his own person, right? Running basketball ops. And I don't think Luka Doncic's going anywhere. It's a very nice statement he made. I don't think he has to worry about anything really, but everyone else is probably wondering what's going to happen going forward.
Yeah. And I love that, Jeannie Buss is supposedly supposed to stay on as the governor for the next few years. And, I believe Bob Iger said, if things change, they change. So that's a nice way of saying, pack up your office and don't let the door hit you. We saw this happen with the Dallas Mavericks too. And even in Boston, when a new owner comes in or when they have the majority, they want the big stage. They want to be there getting all the glory.
I mean, it's kind of logical, right? If I'm paying, it's a $12.5 billion valuation, but if you're paying like $7 billion in cash, like I kind of want to run the thing, I don't want someone else to run the thing. So yeah, that was one of those not great Bob kind of moments.
Yeah, a couple more for you. And again, thanks for doing this. So the other stunning thing about the sale was how quickly this went down. So obviously, like the way that Ramona Shelburne, who broke the story, made it seem like that Bob Iger and Josh Kushner were sitting around one day like, I wonder who would want to sell their team, and didn't think of anyone else except for the Lakers and made a cold call on a Sunday. And then by Wednesday, the team was sold. Did Adam Silver not have to get involved anywhere here? Do you think Adam Silver maybe secretly had a hand in this because Bob Iger has been so open about the fact that he does want to buy a team? Like, how does this happen in 72 hours, basically?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question too. I thought it was interesting. I don't know if you saw Bob Iger talk to the California Post on Wednesday, and he said like, oh, someone let him know that Mark Walter might be willing to sell the Lakers. So it's kind of me thinking, who is that someone
like on the
there,
golf
right?
Course? Yeah, probably Adam Silver, I'm thinking.
Well, I mean, listen, I don't know where billionaires golf. It might actually literally be possible that they're in the same golf course. But yeah, like, Adam Silver runs the NBA, great friend of Bob Iger. I'm not saying it's him, but it did kind of, raise your alarm bells. Like, okay, who's the one who kind of tipped them off? And this came together quickly. And I think we'll learn more in the days and weeks to come of like how this all went down.
I actually was just reminded of a headline from many years ago. Do you remember when Adam Silver was floated as a possible candidate to take over Disney?
Yeah. I do. Yes, I asked him about it. Yeah, he didn't seem happy when I brought that up.
I'm sure he was not happy about this. Okay, last one for you, and it's more about the Vegas side of this, which is the LeBron James of it all. LeBron has said that he wants to own a franchise. I kind of always thought LeBron might have been circling Las Vegas. Now there's this sort of, I don't know, is there an opening here for a billionaire to come in and kind of stake their claim on this Vegas project now that Iger and Kushner are in LA with the Lakers?
I think, it's going to be a very expensive opening. There's still a lot of, there's at least a handful that we know of interested parties. We've got Bill Foley, who owns the Las Vegas Knights. He's building a group together. There's a group kind of like with Jerry Colangelo as a big name figurehead there, but they say they've raised $8 billion already and could raise up to 13. Someone from the Walton family is reportedly interested. Magic Johnson has a group. So there's others that we don't know about. Certainly, it's going to cost a lot of money. And LeBron James is a partner in Fenway Sports Group, which is another private equity firm that kind of buys and sells all sports teams. But they said that they're out. LeBron, I think publicly said he's out as well, unless he's, changes course and latches on to someone else. But it might just be too expensive for them. But I think there's, the way that Adam Silver talked at his Board of Governors press conference last month and made it seem like a team was coming to Vegas, like that's probably the most optimistic he's been and the most forward he's been about that happening. And so really, I'm kind of interested in how much it could cost, because it could be a lot. Like that could hit 10 billion as well, potentially, with that kind of bidding going on.
I lied. Got to ask you another one, because you've spent a
Yeah.
lot. Unless there's something I haven't asked you about the Lakers sale that you think that I should have asked.
No, I mean, I think that's it. It's such an interesting thing. Like you never see a team like the Lakers get sold, and then they get sold twice in a year, and both times set a new record. Like that's wild.
I know. I was thinking it's kind of like the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have had, 3 coaches, in their entire history. And it's like if Mike McCarthy got fired next year, it's like, and all of a sudden they just like start cycling a team that was so known for one thing. And then all of a sudden it just becomes like a revolving door, and how odd that is to reconcile. You've been spending a lot of time in Brooklyn courtrooms listening to plea deals. Where are we right now with the federal probe into the gambling ring that shocked sports fans? I mean, Terry Rozier was a massive name. Chauncey Billups, Damon Jones. I mean, this was the big gambling scandal maybe of our time.
Yeah, I mean, and then you throw in Malik Beasley and Ed Davis, 2 other NBA players were arrested and indicted this summer. I've spent a lot of time in the Brooklyn Federal Courthouse. I'm not saying that as a humble brag. I'm literally just saying it's been too much time. But it's 2 cases, right? The one where Terry Rozier is a defendant is down to 4 defendants. It looks like they're set to go to trial. That trial is scheduled for February 8th. Terry Rozier, at least his lawyer, said he's going to go to trial. One of his co-defendants actually just got his bond revoked and was put into handcuffs and put into custody earlier this week, because the judge decided that he was intimidating witnesses and trying to communicate with co-defendants, which you cannot do. And so they're going to go to trial. Damon Jones pleaded guilty. He's set to be sentenced sometime next year, I believe. And in the rigged poker game case, where Chauncey Billups is a defendant, about half of the people who were indicted have pleaded guilty already. And they also seem like they're going to go to trial. Chauncey Billups, is going to go to trial, and that's for the end of November. And so we're just all kind of waiting on that and to see what trial looks like. And, if you go to trial, there will be witnesses and testimony and evidence, and I'm sure that'll be fascinating to see what we learn. And, I think the one thing that we learned during all of this is just like, the big question I've had really is like, okay, these are NBA players, these are NBA coaches. How did they get into a situation where sports gamblers, allegedly criminal sports gamblers, were in a place where they could reach them and contact them and communicate with either them or the people who are around them? And so those trials, if they get there, if they go to trials, they say they will, like, it really might open some doors for us in terms of how things really work in the NBA.
It's fascinating. And also just the psychology behind what would make somebody, and these are all allegations, obviously everyone's going to have their day in court, but if you're Terry Rozier, you're making millions of dollars. Why would you do this for $100,000? It doesn't compute. Also, just word of the wise, if you are facing like jail time for these kinds of crimes, don't put a rat emoji on somebody's Instagram post, because that will be interpreted in a threatening manner. And I learned that from your article, so thank you.
Yes, the judge was not having it when the lawyer for one of the defendants tried to tell him it was just a rat cartoon. So also don't try that excuse either. Don't just say it was a rat cartoon if you do post a rat emoji.
As someone who has to think on their feet a lot doing live TV and live radio, I kind of respect it, but it's such BS that I can understand also why the judge got very mad about that. Mike, thanks so much for your great reporting. This has been fun, and I'd love to catch up again when we have more famous people in court.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we'll talk in the fall.